It's 2 a.m. You have an early meeting tomorrow, your eyes are burning, and yet you are absolutely paralyzed on the couch, letting the streaming service autoplay just one more episode. You aren't lacking discipline, you're experiencing a biological glitch. It's called the Zeigarnik effect. Discovered by psychologist Bluma Zeigarnik, it proves that our brains will physically fixate on incomplete ideas and unresolved loops, refusing to relax until they get an answer. We usually operate under the assumption that we are highly logical creatures, making perfectly rational decisions based entirely on the facts presented to us. But look at the schematic representing how we process information. Educational psychologist John Sweller mapped out what happens when we try to ingest pure, unstructured facts. The data enters our working memory, immediately clogs the processing pipeline, and creates a severe bottleneck known as cognitive overload. When your brain hits that overload threshold, it doesn't just slow down, it actively drops the new data and shuts off attention to protect its energy reserves. Relying solely on raw data to make a point is mathematically inefficient. It directly conflicts with the hard biological limits of human attention. Nobel laureate Daniel Kahneman explains exactly why this happens in his dual process theory. He established that the brain's logical processing system is incredibly slow and burns a massive amount of glucose. Our emotional processing system, however, operates almost instantly and requires nearly zero effort. Storytelling functions as a specifically calibrated biological delivery system, bypassing the brain's heavy, restrictive logical filters through the use of emotion. Steve Jobs leveraged this mechanic better than anyone in modern business, stating plainly, "The most powerful person in the world is the storyteller." Persuasion occurs when you target the audience's neurochemistry, forcing the brain to care about the data before it even attempts to analyze it. In the biological hierarchy of information processing, emotion acts as the primary gatekeeper. Logic waits for vetting at the perimeter, while emotional input is waved through the security checkpoint immediately. Opening a presentation with feeling satisfies a requirement of neural processing, signaling the brain to open its doors to the complex facts that follow. Once you are inside, you have to follow the second rule: maintain a single, unbroken narrative focus. If you split the brain's attention, you trigger cognitive overload all over again. Tossing a single, clear idea is like throwing a tennis ball. They catch it, but throw 3 at once and they drop all of them. Without a singular emotional hook leading the way, your most bulletproof logical arguments are left standing on the sidewalk, ignored. The depth of this physical reaction was proven by Yuri Hassan's research on neural coupling. He found that simply describing the experience of biting into a sour, acidic lemon physically activates the listener's salivary glands. Look at this animated waveform. It represents a speaker's active brain while telling a highly visual story. As the listener absorbs those details, their brain activity physically shifts until it perfectly mirrors the storyteller's. You are artificially generating a shared experience inside their nervous system. But that synchronized connection is highly fragile. It will shatter if the brain doesn't encounter friction, an obstacle, or tension to solve. Neuroeconomist Paul Zak found that introducing narrative tension triggers a specific chemical cocktail: cortisol to sharpen the listener's attention, and oxytocin to drive deep empathy for the outcome. You can force this chemical release even faster by applying a ticking clock. Psychologist Philip Zimbardo's work on temporal framing proves that imposing a strict deadline intensely focuses human motivation. If your presentation lacks an active obstacle or a pressing deadline, it functions as a simple report. The brain senses the lack of stakes and chemically disengages within minutes. Which brings us back to you, sitting in the dark at 2 a.m. You stayed up because the writers introduced an obstacle, started a ticking clock, and your brain was chemically forced to see the loop close. By echoing that opening scenario right now, at the end of this video, we are applying Robert Stickgold's pattern recognition theory. Completing the original pattern helps lock the intervening information firmly into your long-term memory. You do not need a film crew or a massive budget to weaponize this biology in your daily life. This exact neurochemical sequence is engineered into high-stakes startup pitches, global product launches, and successful boardroom strategies every single day. The same biological framework that forces you to finish a blockbuster movie is what makes a pitch deck impossible to forget. To execute this, first, open a curiosity loop that demands resolution and relentlessly stick to one core idea. Second, bypass cognitive overload by leading with genuine emotion and replace abstract bullet points with highly visual scenes. Finally, inject tension by introducing a ticking clock and lock the memory by echoing your beginning at the very end. To continue mastering the systems that drive high-level execution, subscribe to the AI Product Management Playbook by Deepak Deo on LinkedIn. Implementing this science turns you into the most powerful person in the room.